It's another beautiful day at the headquarters of Theranos in sunny California. Inside, a medical marvel is taking shape, one no one could have imagined until, there she is. The genius who's made the impossible possible, Elizabeth Holmes.
What I want out of life is to discover something new, something that mankind didn't know was possible. I also want to study about man and his ways. Life is really interesting. I love being with you. It's my most favorite thing in the whole world. Love, Elizabeth.
Isn't she wonderful? Just look at her. The poster child of sincere trustworthiness.
I wanted to do something with my life that people thought was impossible before.
Oh, that sweet, lovely voice. What a bird.
I was so lucky in the way that I was raised that I was never told that I couldn't do something or that I shouldn't do something or that it was hard or anything else. And I'm sure that shaped me in a very deep way.
Gee willikers, if we only knew back then how much it really did shape you. So tell us, Liz, how did it all begin?
I started to see business as a vehicle because you have total control over what you decide to do and how you decide to do it. From a pretty early age, I started thinking about that path.
And what path was that, you ask? Let's find out.
Elizabeth Holmes promised the world a medical revolution. At 19, she claimed to have invented a miniaturized machine that, with a single drop of blood, could map our health.
It was a bait and switch for investors that kept the money rolling in. Theranos raised nearly $900 million from those investors who now say they were swindled by Elizabeth Holmes.
Uh-oh. You were a bad, bad girl. Here are the top 10 ways Elizabeth Holmes, bastion of honesty and authenticity, made sure the path towards success, wealth, and fame was secured. We'll return after these messages.
Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid, a 5-cent package makes 2 quarts of Kool-Aid.
From relatively ordinary tricks to her most insidious calculated strategies, let's start with number 10. She really believed in the possibility of her vision.
Do you feel like you're doing something meaningful?
Every day, all the time, yeah. And we have a $4 trillion healthcare problem in this country. As I have thought a lot about it, I really believe there's a reason that it hasn't changed for like 60 years. And so, it's not just about making a box or making a test. It's about how do you change the system. This reality that individuals can't get tests ordered by physicians unless they're symptomatic so that they can be paid for needs to shift in such a way in which the individual has better access to the tests, and we can drive prices down, which will give them better access to tests and therefore more direct engagement. There is all this information about their bodies that is accessible and should be accessible to them and by them so that they can begin to change their life.
People want these things to succeed, especially a vision like Theranos, right? Making diagnostics cheaper to produce, more affordable. You wouldn't even need insurance to be able to get these tests done. Like, who wouldn't want to support a project like that?
The investors feel they didn't do their due diligence. It's actually pretty astounding. Elizabeth was able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and not a single investor ever saw an audited financial statement.
Number 9. Taking on a Steve Jobs-like persona.
What's of you? She's a lot like Steve Jobs, except she's got a much kinder heart. I didn't mean to insult Steve Jobs, but but the fact of the matter is that in some ways he's been a model to you. I know. I mean, even in a black attire.
I think she created a world where she was Steve Jobs for a little bit.
Elizabeth started wearing black turtlenecks, decorated her office with his favorite furniture, listened to Bob Dylan, and like Jobs, never took vacations. She even changed the pitch of her voice.
If you go into your doctor and you say, hey, my family has a history of heart disease, I just want to see how I'm doing, I'm worried. It's wonderful to be here. I started this company because
I was shocked when I heard her voice, because I didn't met her before. That is a voice you don't forget in a woman. Oh, hello.
Yes. She wanted to be an icon like Steve Jobs had become an icon. She wanted to become rich, and she wanted to become famous, and she wanted to join this pantheon of tech legends.
You know, Steve Jobs was, I don't think there is another Steve Jobs. He was a phenomenal entrepreneur. We've got an incredible opportunity to try to uphold a legacy in Silicon Valley of changing the world.
I do have to disclose that I've been in black turtlenecks since I was 7.
Oh, that's a good one, Lizzie. Turtlenecks since you were 7? Next, you'll be telling us we should... Number 8. Fake it till you make it.
How do you make people believe in you? I think you have to believe in yourself. And I think you have to have the conviction in yourself to be able to make something happen. We didn't know when we started exactly how we were going to do it, and it took us years and hundreds of millions of dollars to figure it out. Yeah, but we did. There's no reason why these can't be distributed in very, very decentralized locations.
Your home?
Yeah.
If there were somebody in the audience who's like, I'm a professor of the thing that your machine does, and I would just love to give some blood through the pathway that is the Theranos pathway and give some other blood the normal way, and then compare them to see if the person with 2 watches knows what time it is or not. With that kind of bake-off, is it premature to do that? No, not at all.
It's probably the most important question I think anybody who's watching has about this. Does it work?
Yes.
You're confident in that?
I am confident in that.
By strategically deploying her unique position in a male-dominated industry, our subject launched a surprise attack like a stealth ninja warrior. That brings us to number 7. Use your covert status to take advantage of powerful people.
She really charmed older men.
If Elizabeth Holmes was an Indian guy, black dude, or especially a white guy, I don't think it would have been the same thing that what happened because she was a woman.
If you look at the 12-year history of Theranos, it was one older man after another that she wrapped around her finger.
Blonde, she gave a great story, and people are looking for, oh, here's a great opportunity, check off my list. I am supporting a young woman entrepreneur.
She gathered a war council to her board, reveling in their fame and credibility.
So it includes 3 former U.S. cabinet secretaries, 2 former U.S. senators, a retired Navy admiral, and a retired Marine Corps general, including George Shultz, Henry Kissinger.
How did you make that happen?
There's been this need of having this kind of, oh look, an entrepreneur who's female, and she came in like a bow, and there she was.
Some people can brag so big, they get you believing they wrestle bears on weekends or invent a lab machine that tests for hundreds of ailments with a single prick of the finger. In our industry, we call this, number 6, talk a ludicrously ginormous game.
A lot of the things that were being said about the company were not actually what was going on behind closed doors. This new revolutionary device, it wasn't actually in existence. It hadn't quite been built yet.
How does it work?
First, we've created these little tiny tubes, which we call the nanotainers, which are designed to replace the big traditional tubes that come from your arm, and instead allow for all the testing to be done from a tiny drop from a finger. We redeveloped the lab infrastructure to make it possible to run any combination of lab tests from tiny droplets of blood. One of the reasons that we believe so strongly in the importance of FDA regulation and the intended use of these tests is that if this data is in the hands of an individual, then you need to make sure it's right, and you need to make sure that what you're saying about it is right. And that's why we've been doing all that work.
Our experience in working with the physician community has been to say, try us, right? Test us, use this, let your patients have some experience with it, compare it to the infrastructure that you're using, and that's worked pretty well.
They were producing really wildly inaccurate and imprecise results on a consistent basis. It's telling us very clearly we need to stop testing patients.
They had one reader where they didn't have a shell on it, so you could actually see what the protocol was doing inside. The senior scientist looked at the person who was demoing the device and said, "Do you think this is very cool?" And then the woman who's giving the demo just went, I'll let you decide for yourself if you think this is cool, and walked away. And at that point, I kind of realized that it was this like open secret that it wasn't real.
When I was there, we could not complete any test accurately on the devices that we were manufacturing.
Did they overpromise and underdeliver?
It's a company that may have gone live too soon with blood tests that it wasn't yet sure, or that at least outside parties hadn't yet validated as accurate.
Number 5, control the narrative. You know what? Let's get number 4 in here too. Number 4, spin yarn like an Irish spinner spinning a carry cap.
One of the first people that we served came into our wellness centers, was a quadriplegic, and came in asking if they could do a finger stick because the man didn't have fingers. He had a nub on his elbow, and we talked to our lab team and they said, okay, you can do the draw. And so they did this, what would have been a finger stick on this little nub on his arm. We said, you know, the purpose of these technologies is to provide an incredibly high integrity lab service. And so therefore, we must subject ourselves to the highest level of regulation. We have been, for example, proactively submitting every single one of our tests to FDA because we believe that it's so important in terms of a quality stamp.
Our approach to this has been do whatever it takes to realize the highest level of quality and then go through the regulatory process.
I think about it as my mom goes to get a test in one of these locations. I want to know every single time that that data is flawless no matter what. Our approach has been to embrace regulation because we see it as critical in realizing our mission.
Kind of a shock to us to discover a few weeks ago that you're really only doing one test with that pinprick. Did we both let the hype get ahead of the story if you're only doing one test?
Well, let me just start by saying, and I'll talk about that decision to transition our systems to the FDA framework, which led us right now, as of this moment, for the last few weeks only.
They were feeding their investors a lot of false information. So how would the board of directors members know what the extent of which was going on if they strategically decided to choose board members that didn't have a medical background, that didn't have a biotechnology background? So they were able to not have people that would investigate very deeply in kind of the technology and what was going on.
Elizabeth, I have to tell you, in all my years, I can't recall a private company that I have to candidly, many have never heard of, getting this kind of attention and scrutiny. What do you think's going on here?
This is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
We'll return after these messages.
What do doctors do for pain of headache, neuritis, neuralgia? For my patients, I recommend the ingredients in
Well, we've made it to the final 3. Let's get a little crazy and do this lightning round style. Number 3, cherry-picking data.
The devices were so unreliable that you really couldn't trust it with any test.
Who was doing the testing?
It was scientists at the bench.
By hand?
By hand, yeah.
There were simple things in research and development. We were watching people basically tamper with data. They were cherry-picking results.
She was literally doctoring the blood tests. And it's been confirmed by multiple people now. Yeah.
People would want to alter it to get better accuracy rates.
Number 2, weaponize charisma.
She was extremely charismatic. Like, I would go into her office and she would tell me about, she would tell me about the vision of the company and helping third world countries, and I would be so motivated to do my job. And then I would go back and I was working with a Theranos device and I go, wait, what just happened? This is what we were talking about that whole time?
Her big blue eyes kind of locked you in. She had a very deep voice.
Oh, hello. Yes.
That almost lulled you into some kind of hypnosis. And at the time, I think both of those attributes were pretty charismatic.
Now at 6, the former CEO of Safeway testified in the Theranos trial that he was struck by the charisma of Elizabeth Holmes and the promise of the company's fascinating technology.
And the number one way Elizabeth Holmes manipulated people into believing her lies: disguise the truth as forbidden knowledge.
Our competition would like us to tell them how we do everything that we do.
Like anytime you would ask Elizabeth a question, it would always be, I'm sorry, I can't disclose that. That's confidential information.
I was saying to her, Elizabeth, I don't understand how you could put a drop of blood in here and get anything out that's more interesting than glucose, hemoglobin, sodium, and potassium. The really simple things that can work, that can be measured off a drop of blood. And she kind of gave me some answer, and I said, well, can I see the inside of the box? And she said, absolutely not. And I said, well, I've signed an NDA. I had to sign an NDA to get in the building. And she was like, no.
We never did a press release. We never had a website. We never talked about anything except to people under non-disclosure because we hadn't done it yet.
Okay. Is this warranted secrecy or not? But it's just do your due diligence, ask a lot of questions, talk to former employees. That would have probably been the most illuminating, is just to talk to former employees.
Well, there you have it. Everything you'll need to secure success, wealth, and fame, just like Elizabeth Holmes.
This morning, the woman once called the next Steve Jobs could be facing decades in prison after a jury found her guilty of knowingly misleading investors about her company's blood testing technology.
Elizabeth Holmes, once a Silicon Valley superstar, was sentenced to more than 11 years in prison on Friday. She was convicted on
taking
fraud
her
and
last
conspiracy.
steps of freedom. Looking back as her partner and parents wave goodbye and blow kisses her way.
Today, a San Francisco-based U.S. appeals court upheld the conviction of Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes. She was sentenced in 2022 to 11 years in prison for defrauding investors in the former Palo Alto blood testing startup. The court upheld the fraud conviction and Holmes' sentence.
Ms. Holmes, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.